Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the Abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. Today we will be talking about The Weird Tales of Dorothy K. Haynes. Dorothy K. Haynes was a Scottish writer of weird fiction who was born in 1918 and died in 1987. What work of hers was published was often published in the Pan horror collections, and she also had a couple of anthologies published. But this book is put together by the British Library as part of a series of books where they have republished or published for the first time relatively obscure horror and weird fiction stories. And several of the texts in this book have never been published before. They are from her archive. The beautiful illustration on the front is by Mervyn Peake. It's one of two illustrations that he did for her work. I can't actually pronounce the name of the story for this one. I think it's Bean Nighy or the Bean Nighy. It's about a kind of spirit, a Scottish folk figure that washes the clothes of somebody who is going to die. And when you see it by the river weeping and washing its clothes, it's like a portent of doom. He also did an illustration for a story in this collection called, was it Thou Shalt Not Suffer a Witch, or was it another one? At least he did an illustration of a witch. Oh, it was Changeling. Yeah, it's the story called Changeling. I'm going to come back to that. It's a really great story. Before I get into the book any further, I'd just like to say sorry for being a bit delayed with this video. The reason is that I wanted to do the video for Halloween, being as it's a horror collection, but Halloween is also my birthday. My friend Bill came and we worked on music. Bill is from the band Kleinzeit. This record is by our band. We were making some music for our next album, so I was busy. And but the good news is I got a new ring light, so if I look very fresh and crisp in your image, this is because I have better lighting now. Back to the book. It starts with a really weird little vignette called No Such Person. It's about a guy in a graveyard and he's dead. He seems to be in limbo, and there's some weird angel there who is taunting him, saying that he never existed or that there's no such person as him. And he sees a grave that seems to be his own grave. I'm not going to go through every story in this book, but I wanted to mention this one because there are several stories that are about people who've died but have not moved on, like ghosts, but also people in sorts of limbo, or people who are kind of in a sort of state of paralysis watching the world after they die. There's another one in the book later called this the guy's name, Tractor Man. Matthew Lurk, Tractor Man. He crashes his tractor at the start of the story, and then he's dead, and he's in the house watching his wife mourn, and then slowly watching her get a new guy, and he starts haunting them and kind of terrorizing them, or like he learns to move objects. It's one of the first stories that I've ever read this kind of purely from a ghost's perspective, and explores the motivations of why a ghost might start knocking things over or making kind of ghostly activities in the house. It also reminded me a little bit of the Kate Bush song "Watching You Without Me" from Hounds of Love, if you know that song, about somebody waiting for their partner to come home from work, and the partner is in the house watching them, knowing, I'm dead, but you don't know this yet. There are a few stories that are about haunted places. There's one that's called the Ballyriggs, which is about a house where people can smell gas. This one sort of reminds me of M.R. James. Something's happened in this house that means that the people who move in smell gas. There's another one which is called something about lights and violins. Those lights and violins is about a hotel where something seems to be happening in the hotel, but it's on an island, and it's about somebody who travels out to it. And this person sees a certain time in the history of the hotel, but another person who's with them sees another time in the history of the hotel. And this is something that comes up also many times in Haynes's stories, is kind of time slips where people see something from the past. There's several of these stories. There's one about somebody who goes to buy a loaf of bread, and they go to this old bakery, and the people there sort of seem to know that they're dead, and they're all covered in mold and rot. It's like they've gone back decades into the past, but also at the same time the people have decayed in the way that they would have if they, were like reanimated corpses. It's very weird. Some of the strongest stories in this book are ones that are sort of based around childhood and childhood mythologies. So another time slip one is a girl who claims to have seen a hanging, and she describes it in such detail that she must have actually seen it, but she can't have seen it because she's too young. The last hanging has already occurred. Another one about children, Up Like a Good Girl, is one about an orphanage and about two girls who have a sort of weird, slightly unpleasant friendship with a weird power dynamic. And this is one about haunting. It's actually maybe the most horrifying one in the book. It's really great. Haynes herself was in an orphanage for a period of time, and she draws on this several times. Another one that is a kind of combination of old folk stories and this kind of childhood exploration is one called Changeling. Might remind you of the Yeats poem about fairies coming to take a child away. This is a story that builds on the Irish or Celtic myth that the fairies or the fae come and take certain children and they replace them with a copy. And this copy child is often made of like straw and sticks, but the parent can't see that. They think that they see their own child. Some people think that these stories are inspired by children who developed disabilities in the course of their childhood, and the theory or the story told about it was that the fae had come and swapped the child out with a different one. Anyway, this story is from the perspective of a girl who first sees a witch outside her window. Then the witch comes and takes her away to the fae, to the little people, and it describes her time there. It's a really quite disturbing story. It gave me the feeling of like the ending of Terry Gillingham's film The Time Bandits, if you've ever seen that. Just like a child alone in a very strange world. Another one I really liked, which is sort of maybe the blackest of comedies, is one called The Curator, which is about a man who meets a little girl who is a ghost. It's kind of a sweet story up to a point, but it has like a really, really tragic turn. I enjoyed it a lot. The last one that I'd like to talk about specifically is a story called The Man in the Wall, which is about two friends where one of them is talking about this guy who lives in her house and he sounds like some kind of monster living in a hole in the wall. And then later it transpires that this house had a deserter from the army living in it. So it's not clear what the real story was, and there's some real genuine horror behind this sort of weird spooky horror that the children are talking about. It really reminds me of being a child in the 90s or the 80s and this time of like things like James Bulger and genuinely horrifying events, and then not really being able to distinguish between that as a kid and stuff like ghost stories and scary things that your friends would be telling you. It's like this kind of undifferentiated strangeness of the world. I think that story captures it really well. Before I round off, I'm going to just give you a little taste of the language. This is from the story The Bean Nai, or however you pronounce that one, and it's this is the opening. Okay, it gives you a sense of what a great writer Haynes actually is. There were only three colours left in the world: the purple of the night clouds, the yellow streaks of the western sky, and the colour of the river, dark green, like a channel filled with broken bottles. The water came smooth round the bend, a motionless black ink line, then chopped into little green waves as the river broadened. Just makes you think about a time when people were writing weird fiction and horror stories for anthology collections, and they were writing literature. I'm interested to know, do you know Dorothy K. Haynes at all? I don't know her, and I felt like she was on the level of like Aikman or similar people. I also would like to know if you've read any other of these British library books, and if you have, if you'd like to recommend any to me. Or also let me know who your favourite writer of short horror fiction is. I would love to hear that. I know it's not Halloween anymore, but it's always Halloween in my heart. Thanks for listening. Take care for now. See you soon.